the United States. Under orders of President James Madison, in 1818, construction began on a third system of seacoast fortifications. This third system would dwarf the previous first and second systems and would be characterized by its masonry construction, geometric shape, and tiered cannon placement. Fort Sumter, Charleston's only third system fort, was commenced in 1829 with the construction of a granite island on a shoal directly across the shipping channel from Fort Moultrie. Composed mainly of bricks, its walls would rise 55 feet in the air with the capacity to hold 135 heavy seacoast cannon. These cannon would be supported by a garrison of 650 men. A pentagon in shape, its four main walls protected the only entrance into Charleston Harbor, while its rear gorge wall held the officers' quarters, powder magazines, and supply docks. Now, Fort Sumter's great capacity and ability to defend Charleston Harbor is counteracted only by the fact that it is an extremely remote location, and it is incomplete when Major Robert Andrews takes command of federal forces in Charleston in November of 1860. Headquartered over at Fort Moultrie with the 1st U.S. Artillery, Major Anderson immediately has to get to work making modifications to that fort. And he has to do this for two reasons. The first reason is that Fort Moultrie is a second system fort built only to defend against a foreign invasion from the sea, not an infantry assault from land. The second reason is he has only 1 month remaining before South Carolina meets in their secession convention to determine whether they will remain within the Union or not. While Major Anderson is making these modifications to Fort Moultrie, he is also secretly making plans to move out here to the more defendable Fort Sumter if the worst possible scenario should occur. Well, on December 20th, 1860, South Carolina becomes the first state to secede from the Union, pushing Major Anderson into action. And 6 days later, under the cover of darkness, he moves his 85-man garrison out here to Fort Sumter, leaving nothing at Fort Moultrie but disabled cannon on burning carriages. Now, over the next 4 months, while politicians and diplomats worked to find a peaceful resolution to the secession crisis, Major Anderson and his men worked to bring this fort up to full capacity as best they can. By April of 1861, 3,700 Confederate troops on James, Morris, and Sullivan's Island surround the 85 men and 60 cannon of Fort Sumter. By April 12, 1861, negotiations in Washington have failed. President Lincoln has ordered a supply ship to sail from Governor's Island, New York, to Fort Sumter. And General Beauregard, commander of all Confederate forces in Charleston, has delivered his final ultimatum to this fort's surrender. The Civil War is about to begin. At 4:30 a.m. on April 12, 1861, after Major Anderson has refused that final ultimatum, General Beauregard orders Captain George James at Fort Johnson to fire the first shot of the American Civil War. The signal shot that explodes directly over top of the fort, signaling all Confederate batteries to begin firing upon Fort Sumter. This is the spark that lights the powder keg that had been packed since the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, war was not the first option. 4 generations of America, 80 years of failed compromises to deal with the issues of slavery and the role of the federal government have led America to armed conflict here at Fort Sumter. The 34-hour bombardment which would ensue here would test the resolve of not only this fortification, but also the resolve of the men responsible for her defense. Now, 7 a.m. on the morning of the 12th, with little hope of resupply and heavily outnumbered, the men of the 1st U.S. Artillery began to return fire from Fort Sumter. And this gallant defense of this fort, their flag, would have continued relentlessly had the officers' quarters not caught fire on the afternoon of the 13th. With the powder magazines located directly below this raging fire, Major Anderson had to determine whether to commit his forces to continue fighting the Confederacy or to commit them to extinguish these flames and save their lives. He chose the latter. He chose to surrender this fort and to save his men's lives. And because of their honorable and loyal defense of this fort and their flag, the men of the 1st U.S. Artillery are allowed to hold a 100-cannon salute to the lowering of their flag on April 14, 1861. And although there are no deaths during the first bombardment of the American Civil War on either side, on the 47th shot of this 100-cannon salute, Private Daniel Powell and Private Edward Galloway were killed when their cannon prematurely exploded. They were not the last to lose their lives here at Fort Sumter. 54 Americans will sacrifice their lives on these hallowed grounds, and certainly not the last of the Civil War. The United States would sacrifice 750,000 citizens over the course of the next 4 years. That's men, women, and children of European descent, African descent, of American Indian descent. 750,000 American citizens. What does that number mean to us today? How can we put that into some perspective for our own lives? If the same proportion of the American population had lost their lives during the Vietnam conflict, there would be 4 million names on the Vietnam War Memorial today, rather than 58,000. 4 million American names. As far as the Civil War is concerned, Daniel Howe and Edward Galloway will forever be remembered as the first. Over the course of that war, Fort Sumter's walls were brought down to the level you see today by 11 separate artillery bombardments between 1863 and 1865. However, her service to the city she's defended since 1860 would not end until after World War II in 1947. In 1948, Fort Sumter was established as a national monument, as a place where Americans and visitors alike can come to remember and reflect upon the struggles and sacrifices of the American Civil War. Although today the walls of Fort Sumter no longer dominate the Charleston skyline or dwarf the modern buildings in the city today, she stands paramount in the hearts and minds of visitors who know that those who cannot remember the past are doomed to view it. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Brent. That's my talk. Thank you so much for your attention.